Welcome to episode 185 of the Startup Show. Today we are here at the studio and I'm very happy to welcome Eran, who is the CEO and co-founder of DouxMatok, an Israeli company, and he is visiting here in Zurich. And we are discussing his transition from being an actor and a producer to entrepreneurship, how his father plays a big role, and we talk about DouxMatok and the Israeli ecosystem and some very insightful advice to life. Make sure you stay tuned for the entire video. Welcome to episode 185 of the Startup Show. Today we are here at the studio and I'm very excited to host an entrepreneur coming directly from Israel, the CEO and co-founder of DouxMatok. Eran, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you. We recently met in Israel on an investor tour from btov, so I'm very excited that you found your way here to Zurich to spend some time here at the studio so we can really get a deep dive into what you guys do. But Eran, as you know, on our show, there's a very, very strong tradition that like the first up is like you introduce yourself to the audience so we get an understanding of who you are.
I'll try. My name is Eran Baniel. I was born in Tel Aviv, grew up in Haifa to a family of probably Israel's most senior research chemist, my father Avraham, and my mother that tried to somehow keep the house going while he was all over the world trying to advance Israeli chemical technology. I studied in the Reali school, which is a very strict Prussian type school, then did my army service, and then went off to study, of all things, acting in London, in one of the best academies in the world for actors. Only to discover when I came back and started working that I was mediocre. And I'm a person that has a hard time with mediocrity. So the rest of my life was a search for something I might be able to do and be better than mediocre, let's say. So I went into directing and producing, and then I became director of festivals and theaters in Israel, abroad. And at some stage, when I was running the Jerusalem Han Theater, it's one of the 5 national theaters, I worked very closely with Teddy Kollek, the famous mayor of Jerusalem, and learned from him a great deal about how you raise funds, by the way, because he was just a miracle worker in that sense. And one day we got quite close. He said, "Listen, Eran, I know you do a good job in the theater, but by God, the reason you succeed is that you have patience for people who are eccentric, difficult, wonderful, talented, childish, and we pay you pennies. How about doing work with entrepreneurs that are very similar to artists? The only thing is you stand a good chance of making your banker much happier and your wife." So I thought, I know nothing about startups and everything, but he had an idea. And he said, "The walls of Jerusalem are dark at night. How about making something to light the walls of Jerusalem in an artistic way? And then you can take this, because there's so many things to light in Israel, that could be your first startup." That was my first startup that I started, financed partially by Philips Eclairage, the famous Philips. That became a big success, and we did lighting of public places, private, public, both in Israel and abroad. And I continued to work in parallel in the arts and there, but slowly drifted more and more to the next startup and the next startup, and became a serial entrepreneur and found a lot of joy in that. I sort of fall nicely into the statistics of success and failure in this world of startups.
Yes. I mean, as you know, we do a lot of research about our guests on the show. And one of the questions that really intrigued me was kind of what was kind of the knowledge transfer from the theater and the acting that you were able to really bring into this world of entrepreneurship?
It's an interesting question, because yesterday and the night before I was at a Credit Suisse innovation event where they selected 8 startups out of 400 recommendations they received. And I was waiting for my turn to do a rehearsal of my pitch, 5-minute pitch. So out of the 8, 4 found it very difficult to concentrate and tell their story into 5 minutes. What the theater helps you do is really tell a story. Mm-hmm. And at the other end, where 130-something big family offices were sitting, there were billions in the room the next day, listening. They are people. They're not any different. They like stories.
Yes.
So you need to be able to tell your story and to sort of refine it into the best possible 5 minutes you can give your listeners.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember when I heard you pitching in Israel, and the moment you gave out the Nutella, the conversation, discussion totally changed, and you saw in people's faces when they lit up and they saw the taste. But
yesterday, just to tell you, yes. I really found out that the best way to tell a story is to give an indication of what you're talking about. And we are lucky, because coming into Zurich, I convinced one of the large chocolate companies that are running a joint project with us and are doing fantastic work, I'm not allowed to say their name, to make small chocolate samples for the coffee corner. And they made dark chocolate and milk chocolate, Incredo sugar, DouxMatok sugar. And we had some 700 small such, they were gone. And when I pulled out the Nutella, it was gone in minutes. Yes. And people fought over it. So at the end of the day, when the story meets your taste buds, and they actually click the story and the taste buds, that's when you win.
One of the things that I've received in the email was people who claimed that your father is the most creative person they've ever met. And I'm just curious to know, because I think it's very unique that I've heard that your father is the original inventor, and he still considers himself as an entrepreneur. If I'm not mistaken, he's 100 years old, 101 or 100 years old?
27th of November. The guy will
today
be
after
101.
Wow. Mine is the 26th. So that's a coincidence. Okay, so tell me quickly, what is the role of your father, maybe personal, but also from a business perspective?
First of all, my father was the first student to be accepted to the first course ever of chemistry in the University of Jerusalem, just to give you a perspective of time. Wow. Then he did his MA, he did in Montpellier in France, just before the break of the Second World War, and came back to what was then Palestine, worked near Haifa in a paint factory making paints for the maintenance of the British Navy ships during the Second World War. Quite immediate. He won himself a renommee of a very creative and very talented person. So two things happened. Upstairs they made paints, and below ground they made arms. So my father was one of the first to have actually participated in the provision of defense arms for the just growing population in pre-Israel. And he was then, the rumors arrived and got to Weizmann, the first president of Israel, who was a chemical engineer. And he called my father well before there was the Weizmann Institute and over for a meeting, and he told him, young man, I heard good things about you. I'd like you to help me find something in this barren land called the Holy Land, that the Jews coming in now from Europe, escaping the results of the Second World War, would be able to make a living for themselves. And that took a whole history. My father was the leading King Solomon mines making copper by Eilat. He was then the guy who opened the bromide from the Dead Sea, and etc., etc., etc. So he has developed whole industries across the world. And the first sales of Israeli technology to Japan, for example, was a technology developed in those national laboratories. It was all very socialist, like, national laboratories for industrial chemical research. And it's called TAMI. They still exist, those labs, but they are private now.
Eran, let's talk about DouxMatok. I think it is really fascinating to hear everything. But let's talk, give me first like a 1 minute introduction about what is DouxMatok, what do you guys do?
DouxMatok has developed a platform of technologies that makes flavor delivery more efficient. So little flavor can taste like much, little sugar like a lot of sugar. We started with sugar because it's the most acute problem in the world of food and beverages today. But we also do salt, and we have quite nice results with vanilla. The beauty of it is that we do not do anything which is artificial, not natural. We only change the statistics of how much of the sugar that is, say, in a cake, gets to the receptor, because when you eat a cake today, 80% of the sugar you eat will never meet a receptor. It goes straight to your digestive system. If you can raise it to 30%, you are already doubling the sweetness of the sugar and allowing yourself to take out half. And so what my father realized, and it connects to the days of right after the Second World War, there was rationing of sugar in Palestine. There was no sugar to be had, and a teacher in elementary school came over to him and she said, if you can get me some starch, let's make a viscous pudding, and then very little sugar takes you a long way. And my father thought that's funny, but he asked the British for some starch, and they prepared it, and she was right. Starch delivers the sweet flavor better than without it. It's the simplest way to look at it. And the second aspect, which I'm sure is really shocking. They couldn't really teach in elementary school because the kids were very fidgety and restless. And when they asked the kids, why? What's going on? The kids said, we need sweet, we need sugar. And that's how they provided them with a little more in order to calm them down.
What is, let's say, I mean, like there's many initiatives of companies that try to reduce sugar and sugar reduction. What would you say is, let's say, the difference between your sugar reduction product versus, let's say, your competitors?
What differentiates us from everyone else is we are sugar. And sugar is a joy. Sugar is happiness for many people.
Yes.
And we provide that with no aftertaste, no excuses, nothing, but half. Half of the normal sugar is what our sugar allows you. And then we can complement with better nutrition like fibers and proteins and stuff like that. So what we do is we really look at it in an honest way. There's no way you will convince children to consume an aftertaste. It's not going to work. And if you hide it 10 times, the kids won't consume it. The only way is you provide them with the real taste they like. And if you can manage that with half the sugar, nobody can compete with you.
Yes.
And that's where we are.
That's it.
Everything else, and they are wonderful people, but everybody realizes it's a huge opportunity for a huge market that is craving for a solution. Where we are better than anyone else is in providing the happiness with the health. The mental health,
Yes.
not only the physical one.
I mean, like, how does it work practically? You say half the sugar. Is it like the producers of food are using sugar, adding a substance that you give them? Or is it just like plain sugar that looks like sugar, it's just the half amount?
It looks like sugar. It's sweet, like sugar. Yes. However, our sugar is made of crystals that are loaded onto a carrier, which carries the sugar to the receptors in a much more efficient way.
So what is your plan right now? Like, how do you want to bring this product to market? What is your plan?
The fastest way to bring it to the market is, on the one hand, to work with the best sugar refiners in the world, because they have practically everything we need to sort of build a bypass in their own facilities where they can make one day or 1 week a DouxMatok sugar, tons of it, and then the next week, if they want to make normal sugar, they can make it. But that's only half. The other side, which we didn't initially really comprehend, is that sugar reduction is not just an ingredient. In the chocolate we provided the people yesterday in the Credit Suisse meeting, half of the sugar was taken out, or 40-something%, which means on a scale of 100 grams, about 20 to 25 grams were taken out. What do you bring instead? If what you bring instead is cocoa or cocoa butter, you're dead. It's going to cost you a fortune. So you need to find something else. And that is the second part of our work.
What would you say, I mean, like, as far as I understood, you have a very unique team of people that work on DouxMatok. How are you going about building this team?
First of all, I'm not the first guy, but you've heard it probably umptieth times before. There are many good technologies, but at the end, it's all about people. It's one thing when you bring young people into something which has never existed before, and okay, then that's very much like getting people into the special army unit, 8,200, and everyone around the world knows that they really make something from out of nowhere. Here, we brought a team to something which is very rare. They met an inventor that is, when he was approaching 100. It's a tradition, it's education, it's years of experience and wisdom, and these are rare people. My father tells me whenever I meet him, he says, they are all gone. Everyone I worked with is already dead. They were 20 years younger than me, and they are gone, And these guys knew to appreciate that, and knew to take this and take it to the next generation of innovation, which we actually are doing even faster than we ever thought. We are already doing generation 2 and generation 4 of our product.
Tell me about, just like a quick side note about the patents that you're holding in terms of the DouxMatok. How many patents do you have, and how much is patentable?
First of all, no one did flavor delivery before us. So for a small startup, we got real fast 22 granted patents.
That's a lot.
And we have 44 in various stages of discussions with the btov. But our biggest problem is because there was no one there, the patents we received initially are so wide and so powerful that they sort of come haunting us when we come with the new patents, because we have to prove to the reviewer that that was new, but this is also new and invented and not obvious from our former patents. So we have got 22 granted, 44 in various stages, and we are still
looking for new ones.
Don't have to look, we have to manage our expenses, but yes.
So let's talk about some of the challenges. I mean, sugar has been in the press a lot, especially more in the negative side, because people say, sugar was something that was brought up by the big pharma companies. How do you see that, how the food industry now is evolving more on a holistic scape, and what direction are we going in terms of the market and looking at sugar specifically?
So, people sometimes tend to go to extremes, and when you go that long road, you sometimes contradict the facts. And the facts are that nature strives on sugar chains. Everything which grows on sugar chains. Sugar is energy, sugar is bulk, sugar is mouthfeel, sugar is color, and sugar is happiness at the end of the day. So if you do away with sugars, you will have to feed people with antidepressants. Yeah. And that is not my saying, it's Warren Buffett. Okay. However, overconsumption of sugar is a deadly weapon that we have to do away with. And why did we get there? Because sugar is dirt cheap. It's very often the cheapest commodity on the market. If you can use more sugar to fill in your chocolate spread or whatever, it will make your pricing and your margins much better. This has to stop, And when you have someone providing you with the sweetness and the sugar characteristics, but allowing you to put more expensive is fibers and proteins, of course. It's the duty of the food companies to move in that direction. So we do understand when you manage a brand of $4 billion a year, the only thing you wanted is to continue. And you don't want to mess about with it because you might lose, but they have no choice. Sugar-reduced products of quality will be more expensive by nature because sugar is dirt cheap. But I find it difficult to believe that a mother standing in a supermarket looking at a Petit Bear with a red, the British are now installing the traffic light system, and she looks at it and it has a red, and next to it only 50 pennies more expensive, which is 20% hike in price, is a green. And her boy or girl, they like the one or even the DouxMatok more than the other. Would she begrudge her children the 50-cent difference and sort of poison them with the red one? I find it very hard to believe. Yes. Yet to be proven, but I find it very hard to believe. And if you look at the Americans, prior to Starbucks, do you know what was served as coffee in the US? No. It was like what you normally see when you wash your feet at the end of a long day, something. It was like terrible. And it cost nothing. Usually they just poured it out to you. But came Starbucks and took, 5 times, 10 times the price of their old coffee, and people paid it because they started to appreciate coffee. And now Starbucks has hiked it even further with a new system of coffee houses with baristas and everything else. And these places, they are even more expensive. So I believe that when you offer real quality, which is taste and mixed with nutrition,
then it's a no-brainer. You just give me the segue to the next question. It's about the taste. You have a very sophisticated strategy in place to really assure this taste is exactly the same. Maybe you can quickly elaborate what kind of tests are you doing to make sure that, for example, the Nutella that you have really tastes the same as the Nutella as we know it?
We use both internal and external taste panels and consumer tests. So first, everything at DouxMatok is comparatively tasted blind. You never know if what you taste is sugar, is, aspartame, is. You get to taste 2 in the morning, 2 at lunchtime before you go out for lunch, and 2 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So 6 items internally tested/tasted. Then at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there's a special room where a panel from Nielsen, it's a very famous...
I used to work there.
Okay. Come in, and they do tastings, same system, blind, of 8 different things. When something goes past DouxMatok successfully, past Nielsen successfully, it's then taken by Nielsen for a full consumer test with many questions, blind of course. And so that is the system. Nothing goes out to anyone which hasn't lived through the full process.
Let's talk about what kind of like your plan is for the upcoming couple of years. What is your kind of like your big vision? What is like the one thing you want to change in the world or achieve with DouxMatok in the next 5 to 10 years?
I would love to have DouxMatok provide people with the kind of delight that they really need, and while doing so, actually improve their nutrition in a considerable way. Mm-hmm. If we, especially children, if we manage that, we have achieved something really big. So we look out now to perhaps even push faster, although the money is not as good, food services, even to schools, in order that when they take a chocolate chip cookie with their lunch, they can take it and know that they got the delight they always want at lunchtime, but also nutritional fibers, nutritional proteins that we all need to consume more of.
Now, what does it look like in terms of funding? What have you raised so far? What's the plan for the next coming years?
So the funding so far was, there was an initial seed where the Baniel family participated in, and Gil Horsky, who is our guardian angel almost from day one, he had faith in us, and he continues to have faith in us, and he took the brunt of it, and we complimented him. Then when the first time people heard about DouxMatok, it was like an avalanche, so I quickly put in place a convertible loan to keep speeding up, which converted in round A. So altogether it was 8.1, and then in May we closed the Series B that was hugely oversubscribed, of 22 million. And if we get enough indications that we are riding the horse in the right direction economically, and that just we need to speed our race forward in order to capture more and more market, then we would probably in a year and a half or two go for Series C.
Tell me, I mean, one of your investors is btov. btov is one of the leading VCs here in Switzerland, among a couple of others, but not so many. Tell me, how has it been to have them as an investor?
btov was introduced to me through Gil Horsky, who is also linked to btov. They have really on the verge of spoiled us with care and attention, with contacts and connections, with really caring about how we do, where we are going, where we come from. It's a good decision that because we were oversubscribed, I had to manage. It's a good problem to have, of course. The various investors I keep, and those I say, sorry, please come for Series C. And I'm glad I prioritized them.
btov.
Yes.
I would like to talk a little bit about the ecosystems. I mean, like you have a very deep understanding in kind of like what's going on in Israel. Maybe just like from your perspective, what is the Israeli startup ecosystem like?
First of all, people wonder. Yesterday at Credit Suisse, there were 8 companies selected, 3 from Israel.
Okay.
2 in food tech. So that's not the proportion that you expect.
No.
Credit Suisse have sought startups from California and through the whole of Europe, and so Why is that? People ask us, you know. And the first reason is you innovate when you don't have.
Yes.
You don't innovate when you have. There was a Saudi guy who came to see me in the one-on-ones yesterday. There were a number, by the way, of our Arab people coming to see me. For the first time, by the way. Never happened to me before. And he said, we don't innovate because we have it all. We have the oil, we sell the oil, and we buy whatever we need. Israelis don't. We don't have water. So we are the biggest innovators in the world of desalination. We don't have land, so we are the biggest innovators in the world on how to grow upwards, not sideways, and how to make it with as little water as possible. We have the least, and that's why we need to use our brains and make the best of that. When I was in school, I remember my father telling me, he came originally from Poland, and some of the family, of course, has disappeared during the Second World War. And he told me, Eran, always remember, they can take from you everything, your house, your car, everything, except what's in your brain. That nobody can take from you. Mm-hmm. And that's how you can always restart and beat them all.
There's so many more questions that we can have. Just to wrap up, one last question about your philosophy of management. I think that is something that came up a few times when we spoke to people, that you have a very special type of philosophy and ethics when it's about like how to manage people. So again, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what you're about to say, but I was told like you have to ask him about the philosophy of management.
I already stated it's all about people. Mm-hmm. So you want to be able to provide people with the best guidance in order for them to excel. I am the least important person in terms, I don't innovate necessarily, I'm intuitive, this is not where my contribution comes from. Mm-hmm. My contribution comes from hopefully being able to create the close environment, the fruitive environment for each one of my people to really bring out the most beautiful flowers there are. No startup without challenges. Now we are scaling up and there are scale-up challenges. And these are long nights with little sleep and a lot of worries. The only way for DouxMatok to succeed are these people. Mm-hmm. And that's why I take care of them.
And you would think like this management philosophy has something to do with the age?
I think age has contribution to it, yes, I think so. But I was always like that. I managed for years in show business. I did things that today sometimes I think, how the hell did I do it? You know, I'll tell you one thing I did when I was in the theater in Jerusalem, and you'll understand today when there are missiles flying over the whole of Israel we didn't work today because of that. I was at the Han Theater and I met some time before a Muslim director from Nazareth, okay? So an Israeli citizen, but of Palestinian descendant. And Fuad Awad, and I really liked his work. I, at some stage, went to the Palestinian eastern part of Jerusalem to meet with the National Palestinian Theatre and offered them a co-production of Romeo and Juliet, with them being the Montagues and we being the Capulets, and everybody laughed at me, you know, like a dreamer, what are you talking about? And then, few months later, Romeo and Juliet played also here in Zurich, played in Paris, played in Norway, played in many places, played in the no man's land between East and West Jerusalem, created a huge impact. We were guarded by Israeli security, Palestinian security, you name it. All of this happened when the Second Intifada started. You know, it was really dangerous, the whole thing. But it happened. And it had sublime evenings and evenings where all the actors were tight and the relationships were tight. When you work with people the way I tried to do, I didn't pay one Palestinian salary. I raised up almost $1 million so that they can pay their own salaries. Wow. I didn't employ them because that's something the Israelis always do. We employ and they are our employees. No, they were independent, we were independent, and I wanted to see what happens.
What is your most memorable startup moment?
My father likes dark chocolate. First time, one of the Swiss companies we all know and cherish made dark chocolate. I didn't give anyone even a piece of it before I took myself to Jerusalem, put it in front of father. He tasted it, he loved it. That was the first one, and the second time was when I took my father to the stage. We received the Prime Minister Prize for innovation.
Wow.
And he, for the first time in his life, a guy that did everything for the state of Israel, received a recognition with thousands of people standing up and applauding.
What would you say is your biggest regret?
Always when I do not find the right way to communicate with someone and I miss on someone, especially if I believe in his, her talent, that is the most difficult moments. And I do miss.
What would you consider success in life?
To stay alert, to stay curious, to look for, when you meet a problem, encounter a problem, to get thinking about the solution and never to accept things as they are, but always question them.
What would you say is your biggest fear?
My biggest fear is to disappoint my team.
How do you personally deal with failure?
When I fail, and we all do, I just try to turn the table around and make the best of it, because success starts with failure. Success never starts with success.
And the last one, how do you maintain a balanced life?
I don't. The biggest danger is to believe in your own public relation. Public relations are very important when you want to raise money, to make people aware of who you are, what you want, what you have to offer. Everybody should believe in your public relations, except for yourself. The moment you are believing in your own public relations is where you start slipping down and start maintaining an image and not actually creating something of value. Image has no value. The only value is what you actually offer.
Yeah. Eran, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was
Thank
very,
you.
very, very interesting, very different than, let's say, a lot of our entrepreneurs we have had on the show. I like the vision. Thank you, everybody who watched all the way till the end of this video. I really appreciate it. Make sure you stay a few more seconds online so you can see who is upcoming Monday. I see you there. Have a great week, and thank you for watching.
Hello, everybody. Stay tuned. Next Monday, you will hear about a guy like me, and it's me, who is going to tell you his story. The story of what? Of watchmaking. I'm a chairman of the LVMH watch division, and I will give you a few information about the Swiss watch industry, about my career. I will give you also some advice, because I'm very involved in helping the new generation, the millenniums, and I hope while looking at this video that you will get a part of what I want to share with you. And if you only have 30 seconds from what I said, that's already a profit. So go ahead, stay tuned. Thank you.